This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. The roof of the South Stand at Starch Park is some 19 metres above the pitch, the same height as 11 Aidan Connolly's. But as we all know, there's only one Aidan Connolly, and so you'd be much better off with Dynamic Industrial Services. DIS specialise in working at height, offering a range of services including maintenance, inspection and repair. To find out more, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Oh No 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 podcast. On a day when Oasis were the main topic of conversation, for most people, Rovers welcomed Davy Martindale's Livingston to Starch Park for the first time since 2016. A last gasp winner for Livingston was definitely maybe not part of the master plan, but as Rovers fell to their second defeat on the bounce. Joining me tonight as we try not to look back in anger, I am delighted to be joined by Robbie Weir. Evening, Robbie.
Evening.
You well?
I'm doing all right. Better than some of the people waiting in those queues for Oasis tickets yesterday, anyway.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. Hopefully, a short therapy bout will do us all the world of good. I'm joined from the far side of Europe by Carol. How are you, Carol?
I'm doing all right. I still have 10 days of glorious holiday left, so still in relaxed mode. Can just about remember my name and what day of the week it is, so we're all right.
Doing well. And I'm joined by Leslie Mabin, who is sporting a rather fetching TFG Raith Rovers top. How are you, Leslie?
Day 4 in the Raith Rovers Championship house. Raith Rovers still haven't scored from open play. Les, Carol, Robbie and Blair are in the diary room. I've been better, but I've also been worse, so looking forward to talking with you all for the next hour or so.
We have got pretty strong diary room vibes tonight, I think, actually. It's definitely a bit of therapy. So yeah, I've taken on the hosting seat as Duncan has been peddling his way around Stirling today. So hopefully his arse and his legs are doing okay. And I'm sure he'll be back to join us pretty soon. So we'll just kind of dive straight in, guys, because I had a bit of a strange day yesterday. I woke up in the morning and drove over to Glasgow for an SQA meeting. I was actually meant to be in a meeting all weekend, and it went so well I was finished by 2:45. And I hot-footed it back from Glasgow and made it back for the second half. So I'm really looking for you guys to kind of talk me through the first half. So Robbie, we'll start with you. The team lineup came out 2:00 as normal. I missed most of the chat. Like I say, I was working furiously in that meeting trying to get things done. But what did you think when you saw the lineup? Were you expecting pretty much the same as Ayr with Stevenson moving back to right back, or were you pretty sure we were going to be changing it up?
Yeah, as ever, we were left at that 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon of trying to figure it out, and you'll never really know until you actually see it, because even last season we'd warm up in a certain way, and it was done a bit of mind games to throw the opposition off. But yeah, you see the squad come out and they're warming up in a back three, and then that was what we ended up with. So yeah, I was quite surprised to see the change, but I was quite happy with it at the same time. Liam Dick, we know that he can play well at centre back, and then Hanlon and Murray's obviously a veteran championship centre back, and then Paul Hanlon's just a level above, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, keen to see Josh Mullins starts more centrally, and that's a bit of an unfamiliar position for him. So we're quite keen to see how he was doing there. And yeah, with Stevenson and Gibson being the sort of full-backs, how they adapted to that. So yeah, it was a bit of a different formation to maybe what we'd anticipated. I know that John Potter had said after the Ayr game that he was hoping to get a couple of bodies back, but the only one that really came through for us there. we were sort of seeing was Lewis Vaughan coming back onto the bench,
Yeah.
Jameson starting for us as part of a front two, which was nice. Good to see a front two for a change. So, bit different.
Yeah, Les, on that, just the change of shape. I think something we've kind of spoken about a few times on the podcast. Like it seems to really suit Liam Dick. I think that's the one player I would kind of pick out as. I think the back three actually is probably his best formation, like playing that left centre back. But Gibson at right wing back was, for me anyway, I thought was a little bit kind of out of left field. What was your kind of take on that?
Like you, I was surprised to see it. I thought it's maybe something he could have done competently. It would have been nice to maybe had a go with him doing that in, for example, earlier in the pre-season or whatever, rather than it being something we maybe kind of do properly for the first time in anger in a league game. But I think like you saying and like Robbie says, that's really playing to Liam Dick's strengths, having Liam Dick on the left of a back three, along with two very solid central defenders. One thing I did quite like about having the back three was actually just that it was something different. Because I think we kind of got locked into this mindset that we always have to have the same sort of formation and that there tend to be reasons for that. And I mean, even just having Paul Hanlon coming in, having one extra fit centre-back, one extra guy who can play at left-back, and somebody, even if it's Lewis Gibson, who can do a competent job at the right wing-back position, it lets us actually just sensibly do a back three without having to have what we had last season, which was daft stuff like Scott McGill as the right side of the back three and all kinds of nonsense like that, or Ross Millen there. So I was glad to see it, and I think it is testament to some of the recruitment we've had. Okay, we've had injuries, that we're actually in a position where we can sensibly do something a bit different and have a different option from the start. As it turned out, it went pretty well from a formation perspective.
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting to see. Like I say, I kind of listened to Raith TV coming back in the first half, driving back to Kirkcaldy, and Scott Brown was actually on the comms in the first half. I don't know if he was there in the second half or not. Like I say, I was in the ground, but it was quite interesting to hear his kind of take on the shape and things. And he was quite quick as well to mention the two up front. Now, Carl, I know you were tuned in. You'd have been watching, I'm presuming, rather than just listening. What did you make of two up front? We've not seen that in a Rovers lineup for quite a while. I can't actually remember the last time we started with two up top.
Nor can I. I was thinking, well, when was the last time we had two up front and came out with that sort of attacking attitude? It's been a long, long time. A long time. It certainly gave me a little bit more hope, and like we're coming out and we're going for it. That we're not going to sit back. We're not defending. We're going to go for it this week.
And the first half,
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that the first half kind of then gets going. Did you think that? Well, what did you make actually? Because, like I say, I'm. This is genuinely from a hosting point of view. I never saw the first half, but what did you make of the kind of performance in that first 45 minutes?
Well, the first 2 minutes, it felt like we had more shots on goal than we'd had all season. It just felt that we were right. We're going for it. We're starting and we're heading for it. And then the first 10, 15 minutes, it was definitely fast paced, and it just then slowly slowed down. I'm not sure if Livingston slowed us down or we decided just to take it a little bit slower because we weren't getting anything going forward. I mean, I think it was evident through the entire game we are still missing someone up front. We've just not got that. We've just not got a finisher. We've just not got that someone to got that little touch to take it up front. We're missing something up front, and I think that was evident in the first half. We were getting up there, but we can't seem to finish.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's been talked about a lot. But Robbie, we mentioned already Lewis Jameson starting his first game for the Rovers up front. What did you make of his? Well, I mean, I suppose he played an hour, but what did you make of his first 45 minutes as a starting forward for the Rovers?
Yeah, I thought he was reasonably impressive. I linked up really well with Colin Smith. It was one of those ones where Colin Smith would do a lot of the legwork, and then you'd see Jameson trying to exploit the pace. For a side of absolute units that they had at the back, quite a lot of the sort of tactical side of it was sort of like trying to get in behind them, Livingston, and exploit them using the pace. And to be honest, we did that actually to a fair degree of success, albeit we never really created anything particularly out of the ordinary in terms of chances, I think, really in that first half. I mean, and then gradually as the half went on, it seemed to dry up a little bit. Livingston tended to sort of adapt to it, and I think really the standout chance was probably the sort of half chance that Callum Smith had, where it sort of, he almost tried to go for a Puskas award, like back heel. Really bizarre sort of thing to see. But yeah, you could tell Livingston were getting stronger as the game went on. But generally speaking, I felt like in an attacking sense, we looked a lot better, albeit we still weren't creating as many clear-cut chances as you might have hoped. But I would hope that we do persist with the two up top going forward in the future, because I think that, it was just a positive change.
Yeah, and that, like you say, they're a big side, and I mean Jameson and Smith not particularly. You quite often, if you're playing two up top, you look for your kind of big guy, little guy, or do you know what I mean? But they I would say they're relatively similar in the kind of way that they play. But I must admit, I watched back the highlights and stuff, and Smith seemed to be holding the ball up quite well. I've been really impressed with him actually so far this season, and I know that Scott Brown mentioned that a few times actually on the comms in the first half on Raith TV about Callum Smith doing a lot of the work that people don't necessarily see, the kind of the grunt work, for want of a better phrase, like breaking up the play and stuff. But I thought it was interesting to see two up top. But Les, the first, or actually I suppose the only real chance of the half actually fell to Livingston. I mean, from watching back the highlights, it seemed to be it certainly looked against the run of play, but a really good save from Kev, or a chance lost by I think it was Shinnie that actually got the shot away. Do you want to talk us through that one?
I mean, I think, as you say, I think probably a bit of both. It did seem to come against the run of play a bit, but then again, we weren't completely battering Livingston. It did swing back and forth. I mean, this is the thing with Kev. You will get fantastic saves like that. You'll get saves out of him, and as we'll come on to later, he giveth and he taketh away, much like Murray Ball. There was also the free kick as well, which, if I remember rightly, hit the top of the bar.
Of course, yeah.
So it wasn't only one chance. I mean, they weren't out of it by any means, but they equally, Livingston were not battering at our door down either. I think they probably did come into it a bit more towards the end of the half. I'd say the pendulum was inching in their direction when half time came, but it was pretty even up until then. As I say, the save keeping us on the crossbar, keeping us in it as we got to half time.
Yeah, and it seemed, I mean, like I say, I've mentioned already, I wasn't there, but it seemed a relatively uneventful first half. And that's fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's a fair description of it. There wasn't much in the way of clear-cut chances. I'd probably say that Rovers had the lion's share in terms of the ball going forward and creating things. But yeah, generally, there wasn't too much in terms of chances where you thought, "Oof, that was cutting it fine," or one way or the other.
Yeah, the couple of bookings though, and I know we'll save the Colin Steven of it all until after, because I think we are obviously going to have to kind of talk through, as we regularly do with Colin Steven. But I saw the booking for Lewis Jameson, and it just seemed to be for nothing. Like, he booked him effectively for a high foot, I think. I'm not really sure. It just seemed to be kind of out of nothing. But Murray also got booked. Leslie, you mentioned the free kick onto the top of the bar, but Murray kind of wiped out Shinnie in the previous kind of tackle. But as we moved into the second half, it was actually Murray that had probably the best chance that the Rovers had up until that point, which was the kind of shot that had come from I think it was a crossover at the back post. Callum Smith puts it back in, and Murray gets a shot away. Carol, did you think we were going to break the deadlock of not scoring from open play this season so far?
Oh, it was so close, like edge of the seat. You're like, "Oh, this is it," and yeah, just skimmed on past. I think
Yeah.
Davey mentioned on like Race TV, if it had just been like a couple of yards out, or he would have got on that. It was perfect. It was just, so close.
Yeah. Robbie, we'll just keep kind of rolling through the chances, but it did start to feel like the Rovers were really coming into that. The next kind of talking point for me was the Liam Dick effort.
Yeah, I would. I think that would be interesting to see Liam Dick's XG for that game. Now, I'm not ingratiated with the stats and the knowledge on that one, but it felt like he actually had quite a lot of chances during the whole of the game. I felt that Dicko as a whole had a really solid game, but yeah, he was very aggressive going for things like corners or being available in an attacking sense, given that he was at centre back. But yeah, throughout the game, just popped up at numerous points, and yeah, was unlucky not to find himself on the score sheet, I'd say.
It actually started as well. A really good tackle from him. The ball's kind of, I can't remember exactly what happened. The ball kind of broke out, and it's Liam Dick kind of throws himself into this tackle and wins the ball. The ball kind of recycles, and then it comes back to him. And a really good strike, actually, to be fair. He gets a really good kind of shot away, albeit relatively at the keeper. So we move on from there. Rovers have obviously created a couple of chances, which is, for me, is positive. It's not something that we've talked an awful lot about this season, but it certainly seemed to be, from where I was sat, the team in the kind of ascendancy. And then Ewan Murray pulls up. He plays a relatively suspect pass, I think it has to be said. But he does that thing of going down injured. Les, did you think he was doing the I'm injured because that pass was so bad, or were you genuinely worried at that point?
I was genuinely worried, and I'll tell you why I was genuinely worried. So, very often in games we have Ewan Murray going down. However, it normally follows an object contacting with his head. And he goes down, and it's like Mario, he goes down, the coins go, boop, 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 all the coins go out, and then he gets back up and he carries on. So, what immediately set the alarm bells going for me was nothing had hit Ewan Murray's head. Ewan Murray's head had not hit anything immediately before that. And I was like, this is not him taking one in the dish as he's wont to do. This is something else. And like you say, it was a suspect pass, but it's one of those ones, has he made a suspect pass because he's hurt himself making the pass? And I think, as it turned out, that was what had happened. And I mean, sure enough, in the post-match, John Potter then alluded to the fact that he'd been managing a bit of an issue for a couple of games, which, I mean, I guess is not out of the ordinary. I remember I hear last season Laurie Ellis on Raith TV was saying, look, he says 70-80% of the time you're managing something. So it's not a giant red flag, but you're just like, oh, for God's sake, because we'd already been missing, I'd counted up about 5 starting players, and that was the 6th one that had gone off, and that we're getting into Dunfermline territory with the number of injuries there, and you're just thinking, oh, for God's sake. But on a more serious note, hopefully whatever it is not too bad, and we can have him back quite soon, because he's been having a fantastic season, not just in defence. He's actually been one of our most dangerous attackers in terms of shots on target, which maybe tells its own story. But, you just think, oh, God. And then at that point, that then mandated a change in shape and then all that came after it. So hopefully, Ewan, if you're listening, you're back on your feet soon.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's massive. He's been pretty good so far this season. It's interesting you say change of shape, because that was actually the next thing I kind of wanted to chat through. So, I mean, if we all put ourselves in Potter's shoes, Murray goes down injured, you look at your bench, you don't have another defender, so you make the substitution. I'm curious to know, like, does anybody feel particularly strongly about like a change or a way you would have changed it? Because for me, from looking at it, what appeared to happen is he moved Dicko to right centre back. He brought on Aidan Connolly, obviously, for Murray. Put Connolly to right wing back, swapped Gibson to left wing back, and put Lewis Stevenson into left centre back, which seemed, for me anyway, seemed an awful lot of changes. I wonder, and I'll just throw it open, does anybody kind of any thoughts on that moment, that change of shape?
On Raith TV, they zoomed into the dugout, and basically Mickey was standing with what assumes like the playbook, and must have went through like 20 pages pointing to Aidan Connolly. So I don't know if it was communicated and how it was communicated, but yeah, they definitely were going through lots of options and like snipping bits. Okay, we're going to do this bit from this one, and we need to do this bit from this one. It was like going through. You could see them zooming right in on the dugout.
I think it's with that one, it's a really tough ask because we're already playing a new system. We've got such limited numbers in defence that to rejig it, I don't envy that task for Potter and Mickey at all in the slightest to be able to have to come up with something on the fly now that you've lost yet another centre back. And that was the feeling in the ground. I feel like immediately sort of everyone was like, oh Christ, not another defender that's gone down injured. Like there was just an inevitability about it that you knew that something like that would happen and it would be a centre-back that would go down injured. And Ewan Murray, again, he'd been absolutely excellent throughout the game up until that point. So it was really disappointing to see him go off. And to echo Les's comments, you hope that he's back very, very quickly because he's such a good player.
I just wonder in that moment, though, like you've started with 3 centre-backs. One of them goes down injured. Surely you move to 2 centre-backs. That just seemed like the logical change to me.
I mean, so what I immediately thought was going to happen is, we'll put Josh Mullen at right back and we'll kind of go to a back 4. I mean, that's what I thought was going to happen. But, it wasn't. I mean, what we did, when you take a minute and kind of pause, you can see the logic of why we did that. And if you're going to put one of the wider players into the centre of defence, it's going to be Lewis Stevenson, given his defensive qualities and given his experience. But it really does just illustrate how limited the options are that we have at the moment.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a bit of a shift change for me in the game. That change of kind of personnel around that formation, it seemed to take a little bit of time to happen because when he first made the substitution, Connolly came on and kind of stayed on the left-hand side to begin with. And it took maybe 1 or 2 phases of play for everybody to kind of finally get themselves into position. But again, from there, it's the Rovers who actually get the next best chance of the game. We felt like we were really knocking at the door. So Vaughan makes his appearance, as Robbie mentioned. The only man really to come back this week into the fold was Lewis Vaughan. He comes off the bench for Lewis Jameson and kind of has an immediate impact. I think he has a bit of one of those. He's one of those characters, isn't he? Like he's a player, and it's the Rovers, so he's the player that comes out, Mr. Raith Rovers, and everybody lifts. Like the response for the South Stand and stuff is obviously very good. So Gibson, far left hand side, now as I say, playing left wing back. I thought was a relatively soft free kick. I must admit, I didn't think it so much at the time, but watching it back on the highlights, it seemed a pretty soft free kick for that. But Mullen puts the ball in, good ball in, header out. Aidan Connolly recycles it, puts it back in. My immediate thought at the time was offside, but just the movement of play and the way people move. Vaughan gets a header on it. Robbie, is it too good a header almost? Is that part of the problem as he cannons it off the bar?
I don't know about that, but I think it's just really, really unfortunate that it's not nestled like just into the net off that. I mean, the fractions between like that ending up in the net and not must be incredibly, incredibly slim. But yeah, that's what Lewis Vaughan offers you, and I think I was thinking back earlier about part of the success that we had in the earlier parts of last season, and it's having players like Lewis Vaughan coming off the bench, and I think that's really why we had such a strong first half of the season last season. You look at the depth, and compared to yesterday, it's day and night. The depth that we had in the first half of last season compared to yesterday, even the second half of the last season compared to yesterday. But yeah, he's the type of player that it's great to see him back playing and on the pitch, and you hope that, especially if we're playing a front two, I think that could be a huge factor because that will give him more of an opportunity to be able to exploit spaces, particularly if you've got the likes of Callum Smith or Jamieson playing up top with him. Keen to see how we do, in particular because in theory it should force us to play a far more sort of direct style of play. Sort of you'd want those two to to have the ball into them at their feet, linking up with the likes of Dylan Easton. So yeah, keen to see how that moves forward. But yeah, a great chance, and just very, very unfortunate that we're not getting our first goal from open play there.
Yeah. What did you think, Carol? Do you want to say lovely things about Lewis Vaughan for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, it was going to be that fairy tale moment, wasn't it? He's come back on after another little injury. He's going to score our first goal from open play. We'll win a game. Everyone's going to be nice and happy. Twitter will be a nice place. Pie and Bovril might actually be a nice place. It's all going to be perfect. And then a midge's ball here at the bar got in the way. And yeah. But no, it was good to see him back. And I think yesterday in the whole, we just felt more attacking. We might not have been able to finish, but we definitely felt like we were up for it more. And heads were up instead of down. People were more gumption. That's my new favourite word of the week. There was definitely some gumption about the team.
I like that. How do you say that in Spanish?
No idea. Ganas. Tiene ganas. And Gana comes from ganar, which is to win. So yeah.
I like that. Les, did you do that typical Scottish football fan thing of, as the ball hit the bar, think, right, that's it, this is not our day?
Yeah, but then I always do that. I mean, that's why when I do my predictions, I do them under the alias of Negative Nelly Furtado, because you're just like, right, that's it, we're no scoring today. But I think just to go back to pick up on something Robbie said, there's a very close correlation over the last few seasons between us doing well and a fit and firing Lewis Vaughan. If Vaughan is fit and firing, we're generally doing pretty well. And it's not just his goals, but it's just the quality he brings, the technical ability he has, and also like you're saying, just the lift it gives his teammates, the lift it gives everybody else in the stand, it just pulls everybody else along with them. So I was thinking, that was it. That was the chance. That was our chance. But I kind of thought, no matter what happens now, this has been much, much, much better than previous games. Partly because having Vaughan, you think just the movement, the energy about the place was just markedly different to what we'd seen, even in the Partick game where we actually won. So I was thinking that should have been it. That should have been the goal. But as I say, happy to have Vaughan back in the pitch. And also just to see us starting to come together, even with so many injuries.
Yeah, completely. So the game kind of keeps rolling. We'll just, like I say, we'll keep going through the game because we need to kind of get towards this. And it's the worst bit of it is just how late it is. But actually, I want to, because obviously we all know, and we're going to get to it in a second, a Kev Dabrowski mistake, effectively, for the goal. But before that, there's the ball through. Kev comes sprinting off his line. I think it's Stevie May that's coming through, and Kev dives pretty much to his feet and punches the ball away. Again, another really solid bit of goalkeeping. But just before the goal, and we kind of get to that, which we will get to in a second, there was two incidents that, and maybe now's the time to get to the Colin Steven of it all before we lament on that goal. But there was two incidents that kind of stood out for me. So the one was Vaughan breaking through, and the lad Nottingham kind of tangles with him, and he goes down. What did we think? Was it as bad as the South Stand were shouting for? Did Vaughan make too much of it?
See, for me, I mean, if you're going by the rules, which has it got to be a clear and goal scoring opportunity? I think it is nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be through one on goal. So there is that element to it. And how much, I'd be very keen to hear a referee's perspective on it. I know Sean McGuigan put in he did an article for the programme, which if you're a Club 1883 member, you'd be able to find online. So I was having a flick through, and he actually said a point in his sort of piece that he said was be very interesting to see or hear referees' perspectives on incidents after games so that they could give a bit back. Now, obviously, we've got a lot to say about Colin Steven, but I'd be very keen to hear why they didn't go down that route and how close it would have been to a red card. Because, I mean, it's, as I say, straight through on goal. There's nothing that's going to stop him. And if he does get through, you would wager that Lewis Vaughan can stick the ball in the net. He's very, very good at it. So, yeah, keen to hear the thoughts on everyone else. So, yeah.
Yeah, you guys, I know you guys on Raith TV, obviously I'll have a probably better angle than what we did in the South Stand. What did you make?
For me, it's one of these ones where in the heat of the moment, you're on your feet demanding a red card immediately. Because what you see is you see a guy going clean through on goal and you see him being hauled down by somebody who's twice his size and effectively has no ability other than to just stagger into the path of things. I think with my sensible head on, though, you then see it back and you think a red card would be harsh. I think if it was like the English Premier League, that's one where they go and they look at the screen and 5 minutes later they draw the lines out and they decide it's a red card. In the Scottish Premier League, they go and they spend 10 minutes and they come back with sending Vaughan off for diving or some total nonsense like that. Anyway, I digress. I think in hindsight, in the heat of the moment, you would want a red card. With my sensible head on, I think that would be harsh and it would come into the category of you'd be raging if it was given against you.
Yeah. I've got to be honest. I mean, at the time, I didn't think there was an awful lot of contact at the time. Watching it back, I still don't think there's an awful lot of contact. There is contact, but I don't think there's an awful lot. What you probably can't see from the Raith TV, and I am 100% certain this is the case, Colin Steven is running forward and he's going to book Lewis Vaughan for diving. He's got the yellow card out and he is running to Lewis Vaughan, and the linesman flags and obviously is radioed up and is speaking to him, and he turns and he books Nottingham. And I do wonder if he didn't think it was diving initially, had he just thought it was a foul, if he may have gone for the red. And I wonder whether it was I've already got my hand in my pocket here, I'm already pulling out the yellow kind of job, which is why he's gone for it. But Carol, moving on from that, the next one, again, a bit of a Colin Steven moment, and I suppose we've got a question: are we being harsh on him? Did he get it right? Did he get it wrong? But it's the penalty shout. So again, Gibson on the left hand side, he puts in, I thought, a really smart cross, puts a bit of power on it, keeps it quite low, and it glances a hand. What did you make of the penalty shout?
My Raith tinted glasses are saying 100% penalty because it would have been good to get the penalty and get the win. But I think I want to pick back up on the point that you said, Blair. It'd be good just to get the referees, what interpretation of the rule do they understand at that point? Does it have to be a full hand? Does it have to be deliberate? Does it look like it's intentional? All those things. But yeah, it's probably not a penalty, but looking back in the entire game and the fact that we lost a late goal, yes, it should have been a penalty.
Anyone else got any thoughts on that? Are we all falling on the? Surely not. Are we all falling on the Colin Steven got it right in the end?
No. I think
Robbie's not having it.
I didn't see it initially. I turned away for a split second, and all I see is Aidan Connolly running off appealing for a penalty. But then when you see it back, and I think that for me, I thought it was a penalty. I think that is changing the flight of the ball with where his hands at, and yeah, for me, it's I don't know. Like in terms of, I know that there's so much in terms of how these rules change so quickly over the last few years, but like for me, it's clearly influenced the path of things, and that we should have had a penalty at that point. But Colin Steven, just in general as a referee, it's just so wildly inconsistent that it really is ridiculous. You had Tete Yengi's running about flying forearms left, right, and centre, and yet Lewis Jameson's getting booked for high boots. At the end of the first half, the ball gets launched forward, and we've got, I can't remember whether it was Jameson or Smith running in behind. The balls, they're literally about to connect with the ball, and he's blown for half time. And you're thinking, I know an anonymous member in our group chat had mentioned that they run a stopwatch after each occasion as soon as it ticks onto the 45th minute, and that there was 10 seconds left to play. How accurate that is obviously is up for debate, and I know that I'm sure that it's a good indicator that the Livingston fans were also raging with him, and they felt that they had shouts for penalties turned down that could have been penalties down their end. And I know that it's both sides will see horrific decisions, and you'll look through your tinted glasses, but it's just really abject standard of refereeing. in this
When you're
country.
booking both dugouts because they're peed off at you, you've done something wrong.
Aye.
I mean, that really is. Just when he was standing there, I'm going to book you and I'm going to book you.
But-
Neither of them were fighting with each other. They were just shouting at you for being an Egypt.
It's just frustrating when you hear who's appointed to a game and you just think, you know that there's going to be a circus that comes with it. Like, it shouldn't be that you're going into a game and you're having to worry about a referee because they've got a reputation of just being generally just incompetent and useless. And I get that it's a very difficult job to be a referee, and I get that they'll know far more than the rules than I ever will, but at the same time, like, a degree of consistency would be lovely.
What are you thinking, Les? You're kind of you didn't look sure.
I mean, so like Robbie says, I think I generally have a lot of sympathy for officials. It's a really tough job to do, and I know from other sports and things where I've been doing officiating, you zone out for just a split second and you've missed something. I know how easy it is to do. Having said that, I want to know what happened when Colin Steven was younger. I bet he was one of the guys that got put in the lockers in the PE changing rooms. He absolutely was, because there's proper Napoleon syndrome there. It's just he's sprinting around and everything has to be about him. Blowing his whistle, cards coming out constantly. I think, like Carol says there, booking both dugouts within the space of 20 seconds of each other's one. And the Vaughan incident actually is a prime example of this. We've seen Colin Steven do this against us before in previous seasons. He's not taking that second to actually reflect on what he's just seen. He's coming charging in with his card already out. And he sent Davidson off, I think, once, if not more times, with the same thing. He's seen something and he's already got his card in his hand as he's running in, without taking that split second. I mean, I know John Greer mocks Craig Napier for this, but he does that when you run, and it's almost like he's taking a moment to just gather his thoughts and think about what he's seen, and then he comes in. But Stephen, he's sprinting and he's already got the card out as he's coming in. Whoosh, he's got it up before he's even stopped, like some kind of a Warner Brothers cartoon or something, like Roadrunner or whatever. And it's just an infuriating thing. And the fact that other teams get irked with him as well tends to suggest that it's not just a Rovers thing. But honestly, I do believe that at some point earlier in his life, he was put into a bin or into a locker by some Rovers fans, and he's still not got it out his system.
He's been flushed by the job at some point.
Yeah, it's like that mean Leroy Jenkins. He's just bursting in, like going, no thought process at all. And the amount of boo-boos he makes is just like, there's like one or two you can forgive, because like Leslie says, you zone out. But his just seems to be like a constant rap sheet of fuck-ups.
Yeah, I'm just looking back to that game that we played against Cali, where we had it was Benedictus and Williamson both got sent off. And Benedictus and Broadfoot go toe-to-toe against each other, and then they have a wee sort of kerfuffle. And Benedictus gets sent off, but Broadfoot only gets a yellow card. It's Colin Steven, 101. The guy's just...
Can I just pick up? Was that the game? It was during COVID and there was no fans and the mics are picking up everything. And then you pick up Benny shouting, "That's a fucking disgrace, by the way." That's a fucking disgrace, by the way, in the general direction of Colin Steven as he's been ejected from the pitch.
I don't think so. It was... I remember being at the game.
I remember being there.
Aye. Because we were 2-1 up and then... Aye.
Is it not Matthews that got sent off? As well?
I'm not
sure.
It
two?
2 or 3 red cards, I don't know. It's just...
Yeah, I feel like there was another one towards the end. I'm sure Matthews maybe went as well. I could be wrong.
Aye, I think man Raith lose in Italian injury time. Aye.
I think, I mean, I always, to be fair, I always try and be I try and be level-headed and I try and be sensible. But I have to agree with pretty much everything that's been said, because Colin Steven, for me, pound for pound, is the single worst official we get in any game at any level in Scotland. Because that it's that old kind of adage about the mark of a good official is when you go through 90 minutes and you don't really notice them. Now, granted, I always stick up for referees in the sense that they also have 22 apparently grown men trying to cheat them constantly for 90 minutes. Like, it's a tough gig. It is. I don't think, and I would love somebody to tell me I'm wrong on this. I don't think Colin Steven has ever had a game where somebody would say, "I didn't really notice him today." Because like you say, Les, it is very much about him. And that I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's that instant need to make the decision there and then. You know, he could have, like the Nottingham Vaughan thing, he could have blown the whistle because he's stopping it, gone to his assistant, and just said, like, I'm thinking he dived. And the assistant says, no, definite contact there. And then he might still book him. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that would have made it a red card. But like you say, take that 30 seconds, a minute, to just think it through before you make the decision. Because for me, yesterday, he spoiled that game. It was actually, the second half in particular, I thought was actually a pretty decent game. I know you're Robbie, you'd said the first half was relatively dull. There was I think it's fair to say there wasn't a huge amount going on. But second half I thought was actually quite a good game. But we come to the goal, and actually it starts with another issue. And it's, do you know what? And if I was a Livy fan, I'd be, whatever. But the boy takes a long throw in, and he's got 1 foot 8-9 inches onto the pitch. Like, I was 10-year-old when you learned that you don't take a throw in when you've got your foot on the pitch. It's the most basic rule in football. But he takes this long throw, header out, it falls to, I can't even mind who scored it because I was so distraught at that point. Relatively decent strike. And
Jimmy Brandon.
Kev. Yeah. What did you make of it, Robbie? Where do we just give Kev a free pass because he keeps us in the game week in, week out? Like, where do we stand on that?
It's a tough one to manage because you've got to, I mean, firstly, it is a mistake and Kev should do better with it. And I think as well, the root cause of it was the fact that Kev shanked the ball out, unfortunately, with his kicking beforehand. But at the same time, look, he's owned up to his mistake and he's had a couple over the last few weeks. But yeah, all you can do is just get behind him and just stick with him.
Totally.
He's such a good goalkeeper. He's such a good goalkeeper, and we've seen that time and time again last season. I know that a lot of the sort of comments were that from our side, we were quite surprised he didn't get into the team of the year. And just get the confidence back. We know how well he can play, and he's obviously a fan's favourite, and you'll get moments like these. I think Kev will probably get a bit of leeway from the support about it, and certainly in terms of the dressing room as well. So, again, it's a mistake, it's happened. Can't really do much more other than move on from it because there's no point sitting there slaughtering them for what's already happened. Just got to pick up and move on.
Yeah, I have to say I agree. Anybody got any? I really, like I say, I'd rather not dwell too long on a Dabrowski mistake. Anybody got anything they want to add on the goal?
Aye. So I think yesterday was not a great day for me. So the teams that I look out for, all 3 goalkeepers had horrendous mistakes that cost their team a result. So Zion Suzuki got sent off for Parma because he sprinted out and his boot connected with a Napoli boy's solar plexus, Pavel Penxa style, and they went and lost 2-1. In Japan, Kotaro Tachigawa totally missed a ball. It rolled up his leg, under his arm, right down his arm, off the post and into the net in a derby. So Kev's was actually probably the least bad mistake of all the teams I look out for yesterday. What I do think, though, is I think because of the kind of character he is, and because of how good he can be when he is good, I think he gets kind of slaughtered, not just by our own fans, but by other team fans, other teams as well, when things do go wrong. I mean, I think if you looked over the course of a season, he probably wouldn't make that many more howlers than any other keeper in the division. So there was Callum Ferry, best keeper in the Championship, got sent off last week in making an absolute arse of a situation. You know, guys like little Charlie Albinson at Hamilton, you know, guys like that make mistakes pretty regularly as well. I think just because of the kind of character Kev is, these things get picked up on a lot more compared to the points that he's saved us in the times when he's kept us in games.
Yeah, it's kind of almost Kev's so, I think, box office. I think, Robbie, you described him as vibes. I'm still not convinced that's a thing. But he's such a big personality. And I kind of feel like that the good things Kev does are so good that he kind of counters it with the bad things that Kev does are so bad. And it's that kind of, that duality of man thing. But yeah, I mean, even, like I say, I wanted to kind of go through the game piecemeal because he made one particularly good save in the first half. The more I watch that, the more I think he's got no right to kind of get down and save that. A man of his height getting down there and making that save. He comes out and he looked quite assured dealing with the ball and stuff. Like, they're a big side again and balls into the box and stuff. But yeah, it's just one of them, and you've got to feel for him. But the game finished. Robbie, I know you were in the south stand. The game finished and there were audible boos. I just wanted to get your take on it. Is that aimed at Colin Steven, or is that the return of the Boo Boys to Starks Park, do you think?
Did they ever leave?
Did they ever go?
No. I mean, it's hard to gauge. I saw online there was comments about criticism towards Andrew Barrowman, apparently, in the main stand. Like, you've got to take the rough with the smooth, don't you? And I know that we've had our sort of comments about like what we do on here. I'm not caring about it. It's you think back to last season, how many players we've got injured. So you've got like Byrne, Brown, Stanton, Jack Hamilton all missing straight from the off, among others. Kieran Freeman's missing as well, main only naturalised right back. If you add them all into the squad, Livy did not outplay us. Like, I spoke to a good 3-4 people outside of Morrison's, just waiting for my girlfriend after the game yesterday, and every single one of them had the same thing. Shouldn't have lost that game. We were very unfortunate, and the performance was a lot better. Dick and Hanlon played really well in particular. Hanlon deservedly man of the match. Dick, again, put in a really assured performance. While we're not creating the most chances, I think you've got Josh Mullen playing in the centre of the park. That's no Josh Mullen's best position, but he's still putting in a shift. You've got Ross Matthews there. Again, you want to see players coming in like Byrne and Brown who can offer that, and you're getting 90 minutes out of lads at the moment like Callum Smith, where there's no option to change it. We brought off Dylan Easton for a 17-year-old. I don't know if he's 18 yet, might be, but we brought him off for a 17-year-old, if not 18-year-old, that was playing in the Lowland League last season. Like, let's have a bit of perspective about this. I'm confident that, look, a lot of people from the outside are going to be desperate to have a go at Raith Rovers right now, particularly after last season. Dundee United fans, Dunfermline fans, even the likes of Falkirk and Ayr fans, they're going to be all over this. And I think, for me, I just want a new manager in. I want the circus to disappear. And I'm confident that if we win a few games, that will happen. But I think that, for me, I don't see the point in booing the players. I don't see the point in sort of taking any negative action or slaughtering any players in particular. Seen a few get called out over the last few weeks, which, again, everyone's got their perspectives. Some people potentially look maybe at a player like Callum Smith and say it's no good enough, we're not getting enough out of him. But for me, I think he's still putting a hell of a lot of effort yesterday. Arguably could have done better maybe in the first half when he went through one-on-one on goal. But look, it's small margins. I don't think we've got our strongest 11 yet. And I think that when we do get our strongest 11, I know that that's Raith Rovers Football Club. We never do things the easy way. We never get our strongest 11. But if we do, and I think that John Potter still alluded to in his interview that we've got a few more bodies to come in the door on top of a manager. Let's just see how things go. Just keep a bit of calm about the situation, because everyone else is going to thrive off the fact if we're a complete raving lunatic basket case club. So that's all we can do.
Carol, do you think we are? It's an interesting way Robbie put it. Like, is this a basket raving loony club and we just can't see it, do you think? Or is it genuinely, it's just...
It's football. I think that's what it is. And I think as fans, we need to remember that the club and the players are ours. What the board do, business-wise, we can't affect that. That is nothing to do with us. We can't make the decisions for them. We can't do anything. That's they've got their business plan. They've got their ideas. So we need to support our club and our players and our volunteers and all the people that keep the match going. And what the board do, that's their business. And we just have to exercise a little bit of patience and have a little bit of trust. The board have made their bed. They have to lie in it. We don't have to watch them do in the bed. We can enjoy the football. We can support the team. We don't want to be that creepy dude stalker looking through the window at somebody sleeping. I think we just need to put things in perspective. I'm sure there are monster Raven Looney fans within the fan base, but I've not been on since we did the pre-season. Keep calm, folks. It's September. It's the 1st of September. Yeah, I will eat my words if it's still like this at Christmas and it'll be a little bit of a panic, but just keep calm. It's been a rough start to the season. Scottish football. If every season was like last season, we'd be the top of the Premier League and not going, oh, can we get promoted this year? It is what it is.
Les, I'm interested to pick up on that. I've got to say, I agree with everything Carol says there. I really do. There seems to be at the moment, certainly through like social media and just speaking to people in the stands and stuff, Rovers fans seem to fall into one of two camps at the moment. Because I think everybody is in agreement that the results aren't good enough. Like, I don't think anybody's looking at this and going, it's fine to lose to Ayr and it's fine to lose to Livingston. There are reasons for it, down to 10 men at Ayr and all the rest of it. But they seem to fall into two camps. So on one side, you've got we need a manager. We don't have a manager. This is a shambles. It's going on too long. And on the other side, I think what you've mentioned is we've got injuries and players are missing and we just need some bodies back and we need to get going. I wonder, where do you fall in that kind of conversation? Is it a mixture of both or is it genuinely just one or the other?
I have to admit, I feel quite conflicted, and I'm not completely different to everybody else, but I wouldn't lie, I'm actually quite worried about how the season's going to pan out. Because, we've seen in recent years, we saw with Inverness last season, we saw with Dunfermline a couple of seasons before, and Falkirk if you go even further back. You can have a good group of players, but we all know at this level you're only ever one bad decision away from a crisis. And I think it's too early to call what we're going through now a crisis. I don't think you can actually say at the moment because a lot depends on what comes next with the managerial situation, with the injury situation. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I think everything's fine. I don't think anybody is. I am a bit worried. But I think what I'm more worried about is that it ends up being like Ian Murray's first season in charge, the season where we finished 7th. And we saw that in the game yesterday. We were really pretty decent. You could see what we were trying to do. We were just lacking a finisher. But we ended up losing the game through a late goal because we just didn't have the bodies to sustain that or change it up. And that was the story so many times in Ian Murray's first season. So I'm not hugely concerned at the moment about us plunging down into League One, but I'm just worried that things could fizzle out a bit if we don't kick on. Having said that, though, and I think the counterfactual, if you like, the other argument is if we didn't sack Ian Murray, we'd probably still have the same amount of points. We'd probably be playing in the kind of pedestrian way that we were playing, and we'd be not far off calling for the manager's head and wanting to bring somebody else in.
I was just about to say that, Leslie. I was just about to say that.
We'd end up, the counterfactual of that. The other point is that we still have Ian Murray. The chances of him actually turning it around, I don't think were that high. And, it's not as if there was a kind of good alternative to that. All of which is a long and rambling way to say I feel very conflicted and I'm not entirely sure what's coming next.
I think that, to touch on that point, I would genuinely be intrigued to see if Ian Murray had the same, been given up to this 4th game and we'd had exactly the same results, what would be the chat in the stands? Do you think people would be saying, we had last season, so that was good? Do you realistically, do you think people would be doing that? Or would be people saying, we should have got Ian Murray gone? Because we know how fickle people can be. Look, everyone's got their own opinions. I'm sure there is absolutely people out there that are relatively unhappy in terms of what the decision that's came and they feel like it's a farce. I feel that a lot of there's been one decision that's been within the board's control. They've made that decision, and then there's been factors that have created it to become a bigger situation that it actually should be. Just mainly in that we went for 2 managers who we got very close to coming to the club, and then they decided not to. But yeah, I think that in terms, the net benefits. I've seen some people talk about, the board are like one loss away from their credit out of the bank and stuff like that. Like,
It's nonsense, isn't it?
Remember 2 seasons ago when we were getting crowds at 1,800, and we were watching Conor McBride and Willie Aki going about the pitch and a bit hopeless, a bit directionless. We had the game against Motherwell where we had a great result, but generally speaking, that season was a bit of a non-event. Yesterday we had 3,300 people at the game, and sure, that's not points on the table, much like Dunfermline and Falkirk. As much as they would love it to be, that's not points on the table. But I still feel like the club is heading in the right direction. I don't think the board are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think that there's some decisions that could be different, I'm sure. And I know that there's been a few points behind the scenes that some people are unhappy with. But generally speaking, I'm comfortable with the direction. I think that they are businessmen, first and foremost. And I think that they're making business decisions that, yeah, they are going to ruffle a few feathers. And there are going to be some things that they do a bit differently. And I'll probably get criticised for having that viewpoint, but that's football. That's the way that football clubs are, and I'm sure that other people feel differently. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think I just to chime in, I agree actually completely. I think we're at a stage where the one thing I feel we lacked under Ian Murray, the more I think about it, is like an identity. I don't think you could look at it and go, "That's how Raith Rovers play. That's the style that we have." And I do kind of hope that a new manager can come in and give us that, and give us a kind of a style of play that we can stick to and is hopefully successful. But I have to say the lack of manager for me is not, and I could be 100% wrong here, and I know there will be people listening to this that feel this way. I don't feel that's the reason why we're at where we're at just now.
I'd agree.
I do think with the same problem we have now is the same problem we had under Ian Murray, in that we can't, or we're not scoring enough goals. At the moment, we literally can't score a goal. But I do feel that the performances have got better. I feel like there's a bit more kind of zip to what we're doing. So to finish on a relatively kind of more positive note, hopefully, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to pick out man of the match from the game yesterday. I know sometimes it's easy in a defeat to kind of just write it off, but I genuinely felt like it was a good performance yesterday. It didn't feel like a point lost. It felt like 3 points lost. I feel we genuinely should have won that game.
Yeah.
Let alone lose it. So to not even get a point felt incredibly harsh. So Carol, I'll come to you first. Just any thoughts on a man of the match performance from that game yesterday?
Liam Dick or Jameson. Those were my two. I couldn't decide between the two. I think Liam Dick had a great game. I think that, like we commented earlier, that back three really suits him. Really, really suits him. And I think he's going to, I can see goals in his future, and a very, very happy Graham.
Yeah, it feels like it's coming. Les, what about you?
I would have said Ewan Murray had he not gone off injured, but I'm actually inclined to agree with Carl. I would have gone with Liam Dick. I think he's having a fantastic run at the moment, and at some point he's going to score, and we're going to see Graham smashing through the glass in hospitality and running onto the pitch or something like that. So I'm going with Liam Dick as well. Also an honourable mention for Paul Hanlon. I don't want to call him a Rolls Royce defender. People use the word Rolls Royce for footballers far too much. He's not a Rolls Royce, he's a Toyota Century, which is like a Japanese Rolls Royce but built to a significantly higher standard.
I love that. Actually, just quickly on the Paul Hanlon before I come to Robbie, the more I watch him, I find myself thinking he's quick. And I just want to kind of explain this for a second. So the more I watch Paul Hanlon, I'm like, he's actually got a surprising turn of pace. And I realise he doesn't. He's really not very quick at all. He's just, his positioning is so good. He reads everything. I thought he was absolutely incredible yesterday. I'm genuinely at a stage where I am not entirely sure why he plays for us. And I don't mean that in a negative for Raith. Why that guy's dropped to the Championship at this point, based on what I've seen, and granted it's limited, I'm not seeing why. He is genuinely, he looks a level above everybody else on the pitch. And I'd throw Stevenson into that mix as well. He looks a level above Stevenson at this point. He genuinely just is cruising. Robbie, what's your thoughts? And feel free to wax lyrical about Paul Hanlon as well if you want. But a man of the match?
That's an invitation for me, and Viva Paul Hanlon. That's all I'm saying. It's I was speaking to Hadge after the game just outside Morrison's, and he was saying that it's like watching someone with, it's like a cheat code effectively. He's just like a PlayStation player, to use the Arsene Wenger of it all. Just ridiculously good, and it echoes why a lot of Hibs fans were sort of saying, why is he gone, and how have we let him go to Raith Rovers, because they feel like he should still be there. Just an absolute class act, and I think, see, with players like that in your team, I genuinely think that we're on, like, now that he's back, it's a terrible day for everyone that was suggesting that the plastic pitch, that he couldn't play on it, and that we've made a huge error of judgment signing for him. Just be quiet, man. You still ken what you're talking about. He's
It's like him
brilliant.
and Stevenson's read of the game is completely different, and they take just the right amount of steps.
Yeah.
They're not, like Blair said, it's not that he's fast, he just doesn't take any more steps than he needs to. He knows exactly where he needs to be, and it's like a magician, he just pops up.
So is he your man of the match, Robbie, or is there another man that caught your eye?
Liam Dick. I think that Dicko had an absolutely brilliant game at centre back. Again, it's not his first position, but he slots in there really well. Just a really solid performance. So yeah, the two of them are the outstanding candidates for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'd like to make an honourable mention as well for Josh Mullen. I mentioned that pre-match the change of shape down at Ayr. This central role that Dylan Easton's been kind of playing, and then Josh Mullen had went in there when they went to 3-4-3, and I thought he was very good, and he obviously started more centrally. I think it's just his effort, his work rate. He's such an intelligent footballer. I really enjoy watching Josh Mullen play football. And I do. I know he's one of those players, again, maybe a bit like Liam Dick, that's kind of becoming one of those players that fans don't necessarily rate as highly, or he's maybe not fashionable, I suppose is a better way of putting it. But I really enjoyed his performance yesterday. I thought he was really, really good in that centre mid role, and I actually wonder if that's something we can use in him a bit more, because he has. It's funny, I said to one of my mates, I was like, he doesn't have the legs. I said, well, he does have legs, because he never stops running. But Josh Mullen's not the fastest. He's not an out-and-out winger. He's not going to take boys on particularly. Whereas Gibson definitely seems to quite like that kind of side of the game. But I thought Mullen was really good yesterday. But Paul Hanlon, for me, man of the match, he was just a level above. Again, though, Liam Dick, particularly good. So to wrap up, obviously our another defeat, unfortunately, but we roll on, and we are away to Ayr next Sunday for a Challenge Cup game. I think that will be quite an interesting one as well. Ayr only getting a point against Dunfermline yesterday, so by all for all intents and purposes, Ayr are done, really, because the Pars seem to be entirely mince. So that bubble looks like it's burst. Anything anybody wants to add to the game before we wrap up? Anything we've not covered?
Just want the players back from injury. Give me back Fordyce, give me back Brown and Barn and Stanton and Hamilton, and then we'll see how we're doing.
Yeah, it's frightening. Actually, I think it'll be really interesting next week, and that's certainly something. Next week's maybe not the right way to put it, but for the next league game, who starts and who doesn't? You've got Byrne to definitely come back in. He was only a 1-game suspension, so you imagine he'll be back in. If hopefully Murray's fit as well. If Vaughan's fit, who comes in, who comes out. Do you know what I mean? We could get to that stage.
There wasn't much in the way of an update from John Potter post-match to really sort of go into any specifics about who was available and not. But again, they're keeping their cards close to their chest, and we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, I must admit, just very quickly, I know we talked about comments from people online. I managed to catch one comment on the Raith TV chat board, which appears, Cara and Leslie, you may be able to tell me, it appears to be just as batshit crazy as every other chat board that exists.
Recent weeks, last season was less, but in the recent weeks, it certainly has become a little bit fruitier, shall we say, and madder, yeah.
But there was one comment, and it was, why doesn't John Potter tell the truth about injuries? And I'm like, do you think he's lying to you? He's not lying, but you have to realise that every opposition is setting up to play us. You don't go out and tell your opposition. And of course, as fans, we want to know who's fit, who's not fit. But if we know, they know. And I'm quite comfortable. I'm going to go on record and say this. I'm quite comfortable with not knowing everything, as long as the opposition managers also don't know everything. Like, that is okay.
Maybe they're wanting their own personal WhatsApp group that only they get, like personal direct contact with John Potter. But
God.
it's
Could you imagine?
Patience is a virtue. Patience is a virtue, people.
It is indeed. And on that note, we are going to bring today to a close. I was aiming to get under an hour, and I've not quite managed it, but we're not too far away. So thank you very much to everybody who has listened. I imagine we'll probably be back at some point midweek to have a bit of a chat about the impending Challenge Cup of it all. And then hopefully we'll be rolling on to the league, new manager in place, players back in their plenty, and everything will be rosy in the garden once more. So thank you very much for listening. Enjoy your week, and hopefully we'll see you back here next week.